Yep, and okay, now we're
We're
actually going.
going.
Welcome back to the Movie World
We're going.
Marathon. We're going. I'm
Woo!
Andrew.
I'm Mac.
God, why do you pause? Like, why do you pause?
I think there's a delay. Like I
Oh,
think
that might be okay.
just late enough because like that one was longer than usual, but I kind of usually like anticipate. Like I
Oh,
start speaking before you're done
okay.
speaking.
Well, we'll work on that. Christmas is coming up. Well, actually, no, it's not. Christmas is past. Ignore me. Anyway, we're on the Mummy 3, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. We are
Movie.
beginning our downward slope, our dive to the ground, if you will, of the Mummy franchise. Um,
You might
yeah,
have to convince me.
we'll talk about it because I'm being a little
Okay.
dramatic. But
Okay.
people who have already watched all of these know the next one is beneath the ground, man. But we'll get to that next week. This one
True.
though, Mummy: Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, came out in 2008. Directed by Rob Cohen, starring really only two of our original guys. Um,
Mm, I didn't like the recast.
yeah, that's one reason why a lot of people didn't like it. We are missing our Rachel, and if we were to hop right in real quick, since we brought it up, that is definitely a noticeable, painful weakness of this movie because I don't think you
Yeah.
really consider how much those last two are really held up by not just Rick and not just Evie, but the combo of both. And then you take out
Mm-hmm.
Evie, and it's like, now
Mm-hmm.
Rick is really just your average adventure guy because he doesn't like have, yeah. And like, I mean, I think she does fine
Mm-hmm.
mostly, but it's just not Evie. And I really
And
love
I
Evie,
think,
and it's not the same.
yeah, whoever was in charge of casting is the one who made that mistake. I think the actress kind of does the best that she can with the position that she has, but she's clearly not cast to be a mimic
Right.
of Rachel Weisz, right? Which means she's supposed to make the character her own. The problem with that is that we're in our third movie of the franchise, and Evie's character is central to the first two films.
I
Like,
know.
and their strategy, for whatever reason, they couldn't get Rachel back, and their strategy was let's not do Evie. Let's just put somebody else in Evie's place and call it Evie. And that was kind of a problem because what ends up happening is like you do get a fair amount of presence of the character of Evie in the story, but the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic feels very different. I don't know that it's bad. Like if we had started with this dynamic, I think I would enjoy it, but since it's not the dynamic that I wanted it to be, it feels bad sometimes.
I don't know. I agree. I don't blame you. I think you're right. 'Cause I think it's just the chemistry's not the same, and it's
Mhm.
also a little bit of the writing. Like they did this
Yeah.
weird "we're retired" thing, which I want to come back to and talk about that specifically. But like, it's a combo of it's not Rachel, it's making the character her own, but the character's already been established. It's this new direction for that character as well. Also with this new story, like it's a lot of conflicting pieces, none of which work well together, all of which to the detriment of this movie.
Mhm.
And I don't hate that we've moved away from Egypt necessarily. I think that's kind of
Mhm.
cool, and we'll talk about that in a
Mhm.
second as well. But like, it is weird. I had never really thought about it in this way. I've seen this movie a couple of times. This is like the third or fourth watching it all the way through. There's only two returning characters, and one of them is Jonathan. So like, this almost doesn't feel like a continuation at all. They keep referencing the previous
Mhm.
movies. But like, Jonathan, without the balance of Evie and the adventure, is just your average. I'm in it for the money, always in debt, not quite scummy, but a little bit slippery comic relief
Mhm.
character. And then Rick is again just your kind of go-to action adventure hero who is balanced by his love and appreciation of the academic, which we don't really get a lot of in this one. Especially like even
No.
all of our complaints on Evie aside, she doesn't really get to do a lot of the Evie things. Even they're all just adventure
She reads
action
one
heroes.
passage and it's not even in the language that
It's
she's
not
studying.
even in the language she studies. She doesn't also she only translates it. She doesn't even read it like in Chinese. You know what I mean? So
That's true.
you almost forget that this is supposed to be Rick. You forget that this is Alex. You forget that this is Evie because it's not Evie. And you forget that this is Jonathan because Jonathan doesn't really get to do anything. Like we said in the last two episodes, he always gets to do something really important, and he doesn't
Mhm.
in this one really at all.
I'm gonna push back a little bit
Okay,
on
okay,
the idea of it not really feeling like them. I do feel like Rick and Alex carry that a little bit.
okay.
Um, I hear that Rick is not super balanced out, but Rick is just adventure boy with some appreciation for the academic in
Mm-hmm,
the other two films. And in the
mm-hmm,
second one, he knows more because he's been with Evie.
mm-hmm,
But really, it's just I'm the one who points and shoots the guns. You're the one that reads the manuscripts. We fight off mummies together, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, and Alex, I thought multiple times that Alex's actor did a really good job of mimicking Brandon Fraser's mannerisms.
Yeah, no, I did catch
Um,
some of that. You're right. You're right.
yeah, and like the way that he delivers lines and the way that he like smirks and the way that he even like loses his temper in one of the scenes is
Mm-hmm.
written
Very Fraser-y.
in an imitation of what happens in the other two films with the Rick character. So it's I felt like that was actually a pro. It's not enough to save anything, but somebody was doing their job, and it does show.
Okay, I will give you that. And I did want to talk more about Rick and Alex because I really like again how we talked last week about the father son relationship in that movie. We don't get like a lot of interactions, but like Rick clearly cares. He's very, I think, emotionally open, at least with Evie, about their dynamic with their kid. Um,
Mhm.
I didn't like what they did in this movie. Um, and I could just sum up the movie, but I don't like that we had to go into more of a cliche, estranged, borderline
Yes, I thought that was
estranged
odd.
son.
Mhm.
I don't, in a way, I don't find it believable. I just don't.
Same.
There's a lot of time between the last movie and this one. It's a little over 10 years because they were like spies in World War II, I guess. But
Mhm.
I just don't believe that these characters who we see in the last one are loving, involved, committed parents who almost lose their son to a world destroying mummy. I just find it hard to believe that they would ever end up having any kind of long lasting conflict. These are emotionally intelligent characters. This feels like cheap, manufactured, unnecessary tension to have some sort of emotional comeback, which we didn't need. I honestly almost wish like there are so many things you could have done differently, and I don't want to get into all the things I was thinking about because I think we're talking about good things, and I want to stay on that for at least a second. It's I feel like there was wasted potential of what they could have done with Alex, and I don't know why he doesn't have an English accent anymore.
Mm.
It doesn't
It was
make
so
any.
heavy in the last film. I hadn't even thought about it.
Well, I did because he grows up in England with his mother and the surroundings, and he's now working in China and has the most American accent of anyone in this movie.
Yeah. They do they switch him to pretty Rick, like, mannerisms and traits rather than Evie, and in the last one, he was very balanced between the two
And
of
that
them
was
while still being his
and that was
own
great. That's
character.
some of the appeal of Alex was that he's a mixture of those two characters.
Although it is worth noting, again, consistency, he drew a message in the sand, again, to communicate with his dad in the final fight, which I thought was clever.
Mm-hmm,
Callback to the
mm-hmm.
second one,
Yeah,
divide message.
yeah, that
I
was
looked
pretty
at
good.
this like, "That looks like a division symbol, but I have no idea what it means," and he said, "Divide," and I went, "Oh,
Oh,
duh."
look at him being smart. Yeah, that was pretty good. I did appreciate that.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that until you brought it up, so that's pretty
Oh,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know, I went into this film with low expectations, and maybe that's, like, kind of inflating it a little bit. I would not say by any means that it's as good as the first one. but I think it competes with the second one because this
Uh,
has less of my pet peeves in it. The special effects are better, not flawless, but better than the second one. I feel like the
okay.
story makes a little bit more sense in this one than it does in the second one.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So we're gonna fight this episode. I see how it is.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, there are yeah,
I
let's go.
okay. So your two positives were specifically two of my negatives, which
Uh-huh.
were I don't think that the special effects are better. I think they are notably worse given the time because it's a 9 year difference and they don't seem to have improved that much. With the caveat being when he's a monster, a dragon, or the weird zombie creature, which interesting curse. I think it looks like shit. It's below
Yes.
where it should be. When he is the terracotta soldier, the moving
Mhm.
around the metal with the glowing flame beneath, that's good shit. I'll give them full credit. That looks cool. It's an
I
interesting
love the
villain
curse that
design.
he's dealing with for the
Yes.
whole thing. Yeah,
And
that's cool.
that is notably cool, stands out, and I really dig it. Him walking around and clinking like a great big suit of armor, him ripping his own face off to throw it as a weapon, like that's awesome. But every time I see his weird fleshy zombie body, it's like, ew, Emotep looked better in 1999 or whatever it was. So and like his weird CGI dragon face coming out of the Shangri-La pool of life, awful. It is
Yeah.
awful. It's
No, I actually
terrible.
that was that's actually one of the biggest strikes against the film for me is that shape-shifting bit,
it's
especially when the first thing that comes out is a very
I
Greek-looking hydra.
it's
Like,
jarring.
what?
I
You
know.
have Chinese dragons that you've
I
kind of already shown in the
know.
festivals earlier.
Yes.
Why not use a Chinese
Seriously.
inspired monster?
Very much
But
so.
fine, whatever.
Ugh.
But I don't know. I maybe it is not up to the standards of the time, but if you watch the sequel and this movie back to back, this one special effects are better. It looks like a better film. They hold up better
Well, see,
than the other one.
we talked about this a little bit last week, which was I feel like the special effects for the second one look worse because the movie is filmed a little different. It's more modern, and that makes the special effects look a little bit worse. I think they've continued down that trend of this feels more modern, it feels more updated. I don't think the special effects are keeping up, and so it makes it feel worse and worse and worse. Um, they're technically better than the last one, sure, but not by much. And this is 7 years later. This is close to when Avatar came out. Like this is close to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Like not around the same time, but close. This is the same year Iron Man came out. We're beyond this. I
I guess
feel.
I do not. How do I go with this? There's a lot of people flying around on wires that you can't see, but they're
Mhm.
very obviously people doing stunts on wires,
Yeah.
right? I did not take that against the film because it looked to me like it was very much inspired, like by martial
Oh
arts films,
yeah.
especially
No.
even like my Michelle Yeoh's
Yeah. Yeah.
presence in the
Yeah.
film, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I don't
No,
know
I'm
if
not
that's
either.
involved in your
I'm
critique
not
at
either.
all. Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
specifically talking about the design of the monsters, the mummies, if you will, because like they aren't really mummies this time around. They're more like zombies. The zombies, the mummies, and some of the environments. It's just the CGI is not where it absolutely could have been given the era we're in. Whereas in 1990 or that was 2001. I'm sorry, 2001. It's a little bit of both. The Anubis warriors looked awful. The Scorpion King, terrible. But like other bits and pieces are about where like it could be. It's hit or miss. This one I just feel like we should have been better. And it felt more like they had budget for the terracotta version and not for anything else technically. Um and then as far as it makes sense, I don't think this makes any sense at all. Like even a little bit. Like the first movie, there's like one really big thing that's kind of like a coincidence that you just kind of yada yada away. I think personally it's that Benny is on the boat at the same time that Rick is. But who cares?
Mhm.
He gets swept up into the adventure later. The next movie is coincidence after coincidence after coincidence after coincidence. But hey, it's fate because magic. It's like, okay, fine, that's dumb, but you have a reason. In this one, Alex finds this thing the same time his parents are in China. And I realize that they reach out to them, but there's no reason to reach out to them at all. Like they say that they pulled some strings to make sure they're the ones that bring the eye. There's no reason for it to be them at all. Nothing. There's not a single
They
thing that they say and that had to be them. They had no trouble getting the eye to China. There was nothing sneaky. They wanted the O'Connells specifically for no reason at all. It was just
From
it
what I
was
understood, it was because of their connection to their son and the fact that they thought they could use them to open the eye.
why? What did they need them to do? They didn't know about the pure heart thing. You could find anyone who could read ancient Chinese in China. And like on top of that though as well, Jonathan has a club in China of all places.
Yeah.
He's not there for any other reason. Like all of this stuff is going on in the same place around the same time. Like it's just a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense. And like the Chinese government is now choosing to do all this because of the effects of World War II or whatever. But like what's her name? Lynn and Michelle Yeoh, they've been guarding this tomb for 2,000 years. Guarding it from who? Someone built this secret tomb thing to encase the Terracotta Army and the general, which apparently the Chinese government has been vaguely aware of for X amount of time, X amount of years, to X extent. He's not some sort of fanatic that we know of. They're all into it, and it's just now they've decided that we're gonna go do this thing because, yeah, because
It's weird.
that.
I had interpreted, I guess the film doesn't say, but I had interpreted the general as a fanatic, someone who had a small militia and wanted to do like something unique. Like it was his personal goal,
I
essentially.
think it's fair to interpret it that way because he's this movie as well. Another quick little complaint: it's basically the first and second one combined without doing anything super original. But because he acts like that guy, the curator of the museum in the last movie. But that's
Mhm.
another thing they didn't really explain a whole lot in the second one is where those fuckers came from. But whatever. This isn't even a secret cabal or a secret cult. This is just the Chinese government. I think the way they talk about it, because he's just a general in the
I agree.
military, and they don't like he is he's paying and financing Alex's excavation of this place, but like we don't really talk about or explore at all as to why it was forgotten. Like what is it? Shit. Hamunaptra, a magical
Mm,
city that was like a
mhm.
big old no-no where they buried bad people, so that was lost. And then shit. What's the other one? The Oasis. Um
Mhm.
that's
I don't
again
remember what
magic,
it's called.
yeah, magical Oasis thing. That's lost. Of course it is. But this tomb, this thing, what was going on with this? Like, why was this built? They didn't lose the Great Wall of China in the last 2,000 years. That's doing just fine. So like why was the Terracotta Army lost? Why was it buried the way it was? Like there's some kind of cool fun things that the other movies have done, whether it was over exposition or not, that this one just doesn't do. And I've been going on for a
I
minute, but
guess
I wanted to elaborate on why this one doesn't make as much sense to me.
it might be worth throwing in a note here just because I do have it pulled up. According to the Wikipedia page, the general is rogue,
Oh,
so
is
it's
he?
not like it's the
Okay.
government.
Okay. They do not make that
That's not
clear.
clearly explained in the
Yeah.
film. I just thought he was because
All
it was
right. All
like
right.
it's just him and his little group. Like it's not
Okay.
like the full weight of the military
Okay.
shows up at any point.
Fair
But
enough.
anyway, the I think you're right about sort of like the circumstances of the thing are kind of just like served up on a platter. Um, the tomb being lost, I think, can be as easy as, like, a lot of tombs are lost simply by the passage of time and bad record keeping, and then also, like, it seems like Lynn and her mom have been actively involved in trying to prevent him from coming back for thousands of years. So, they could be intentionally destroying records to make sure that
Yeah.
it stays lost.
I don't think that helps though, because Lynn meets Alex in the tomb, and none of the guys up at the front are like, "Hey, don't go in there, young lady," which said to me there's a different way in that she's aware of, and she knew where the tomb was. So why didn't you guys stab this dude a long time ago? If you knew where he was and you had the weapon to do it, why did you let him just sit there this whole time? Like, Ardith Bay
It might
couldn't
have
kill Emotep because Emotep was dead and there wasn't some sort of weapon that could kill him. But
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Lynn and Mother were like, yes, we will defend this thing because we know exactly where it is, and we've had 2,000 years to think about it. And time has passed enough that somebody in China moved all of the terracotta soldiers and put the emperor in a great big statue of himself, and then buried it and added a bunch of booby traps and stuff, because why not, I guess, sure, fine. And we apparently have a way in, but we're just not gonna do anything about it.
No. Because she could have snuck in on her own. There's no reason to invent a backdoor. The movie is pretty clear she's supposed to be like a very skilled like ninja essentially. She can get in, let's just say she can. I think they weren't worried about trying to doubly kill the emperor until the eye was involved. I mean, they were concerned about it. That's why they were trying to prevent people from getting in the tomb. But there's a concern about witnesses too. Where like you noticed like the Pembridge guy or whatever, the one who went in the tomb before them, he was killed. And I wasn't able to tell, but it looked like it was not a trap. It looked like something had pinned him to the column. I had thought that had been Lynn. And,
Oh,
like, he was on his own, so he was easy to kill. This is a
maybe,
whole expedition,
maybe.
and she's hoping the traps will take them out so that there's no, like, revealing of the fact that she's there, and then when
Mm.
he's on his own, she's immediately going to take him out because that's a no witnesses situation.
Mm.
And they're not worried about, like, trying to kill the emperor until the eye is in the same room as the emperor, and then she's like, "I gotta get this knife in his heart before everything is terrible." And that's when
Yeah,
it finds out that they've been mistaken about which of the bodies was the emperor anyway.
I guess. Like, sure, but again, that brings up the question: how is it you guys didn't know this over the 2,000 years? You kept tabs on it, but you also didn't. And then she fails, right? And runs away. And then Alex and the other living guy leave because they got to go get their equipment and
Mhm.
their crew and all that. Like, then do it now, lady. Like,
Yeah.
you had the room to yourself. I call absolute bullshit that she isn't a witch. 2,000 years,
Mm.
your mother's like this magical witch that lives in the mountains of
Did she touch
China,
nothing?
and you can speak Yeti, but you can't do magic, sir, madam. Absolutely not. Bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
so again, it's just look. I'm giving you some slack and being honest about my viewing experience this time around. It was better than I remember it. I had
Mm.
fun, but it's easily, I would argue, the worst of the three. Like, bar none. Like, not even close.
I don't know, I'd have to watch the second one again. I had more fun watching this one than I did the second one. The
Interesting.
second one hit some of my pet peeves. I
Oh.
don't like it when a film, like, stalls in the middle or, like there was the whole, like, montage thing where they were jumping from, like,
You don't love that?
scenic thing. That was
You don't like
dumb.
seeing the Temple of Abu
Um,
Simbel for 2.5 seconds? No?
no, if you're gonna take me to a cool place, put a fight in that place.
You don't love
Don't
going to
skip
Phil
it.
Eye? You don't see the logic of Anubis doing this thing for absolutely no reason. Yeah, no, I mean you're right. I get that.
Um, in this one, if you ignore the Evie thing, you have some cool character dynamics going on. The drummed up drama between Rick and Alex is annoying, but not overplayed, in my opinion, in the sense that
Not
like
quite. Yeah,
it doesn't drag the film down because it's happening.
fair.
It has very little consequence.
That's a good
And
point.
then um I like Lynn and Alex a lot, even though they are kind of like
Yeah.
the writing is super expository. And
Uh
that's
huh.
my biggest issue with the film. I think it has weaknesses in other areas, but it could have made up for it if it weren't for the fact that every now and then a character just shouts, and this is the thing that we have to do now, you know?
Yeah.
And that happens, I noticed it 3 times, but I'm sure it happens more than that.
Yeah. There was one in particular that I made a mental note of when Rick just wakes up after being stabbed and the Emperor is walking towards the pool and Evie says, "Oh no, his powers have fully regenerated." And my first thought was, "How do you know that? He's
Yeah,
not he's not
exactly.
doing anything different than everything he's already done to you guys. What do you mean?
Mhm.
What is writing? And what was told to you for you to scream like on set? Like what were you supposed to see? Because nothing he's done is indicating that. It almost feels like this is something you've just said in every other movie because you have said that in every other movie, and so that's what is said. Because like I feel like you're trying to tell the audience something, like you're saying, but like,
Mhm.
oh no, his powers have fully regenerated, but he hasn't got into the pool yet for one, so who cares?
Well,
I,
and that sort of thing, like, they might have been able to get away with a little bit in the first 2 because she just knows all this stuff about all the stuff in Egypt, right? Like, that's
mm,
her character. And I don't think they did it as obviously in the first 2, or at least not the first one. But if it did happen, it was like, but that's something that Evie would know because she's dedicated her whole life to the study of these myths, right? Or this history. And one, like, maybe she knows a little, but that we have no reason to believe that she would be familiar with the particular story of this general. In fact, she is often not the one. So, like, I don't know. The very exposition lines bothered me a
mhm,
fair amount in this one, as did the fact that, like, every now and then the writing jokes were just a little bit too, like, lamp shady, where they're like, it's funny, but the line where Rick's talking is like, "I've killed more mummies than you have," and you're like, "You've only killed one mummy."
mhm,
"I killed one mummy twice." Like, that should have been really, really funny, and
uh-huh.
it was kind of funny, but something was a little bit off about it still.
Yeah,
And
for me, my knee jerk reaction is, first of all, sir, you didn't kill Emotep the second time, so that's inaccurate. You killed Emotep, and you killed a bunch of his minions, and you killed the fucking Scorpion King. So like your roster is already really impressive. So I mean, I'm
mhm,
being anal about it. I'm ruining the joke because it's technically not accurate. So I don't like it as well, but like for different reasons.
mhm. It's just I think the writing and the recast are the weakest parts of this film. I think the fact that it doesn't totally make sense is fine more or less for the genre of film that it is. Um, Usually there's a little bit more explaining that films like that do to make things happen, but I think if the writing had been better, I don't know that I would have even noticed.
I think I still would have. That's a pet peeve for me. Is just
Mhm.
the situations that bring our characters together, the foundations. I feel like you got to start with that, and when those are weak, it makes me wonder, or it makes me feel like, okay, this was more of like a, well, the second one did really well, so we have to make some money, so we make this movie. Like, I feel like
There
it's
might have been
it's
some lampshading about that. Did you notice that she had written 2 books
uh huh,
and she was in contract
uh
for a 3rd
huh,
one and she couldn't come up with any ideas?
uh huh. You played yourself. I did spend a little bit of time doing that thing I do where I was thinking, okay, it's like how would I do this differently? And I just, for one, this stupid well we're retired thing, so that they are trying to do regular people life, and they both clearly hate it. Like, this is dumb.
Mhm.
They're not that old. It's not necessary. And like, on top of it, every single movie we've had, one of their adventure buddies is like super fucking old. We have Rick and Evie, clearly miserable with retired life, while Alex is working with this dude who's old as dirt. Like, it doesn't make any sense for them to be retired. And they kind of they
They
try to
said they
write
had
it
a
away.
conversation about it.
Yeah, they do, and it's stupid. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It's not something they had to include. It's not something that's narratively significant. They were spies and did cool adventure stuff during the war, and after the war, they decided that they wanted retired life, and they clearly both don't like it. It'd be more interesting if they continued to do not hunting down mummies all over the world, but just Indiana Jones esque in that they're out there doing stuff. Like, Rick is more just making sure that Evie is always safe because, you know, there's tomb robbers out there. And like, not that she needs it because she's also a badass, but he also wants to be with her. It's like they're out there doing stuff. Alex, because he's a kid or a young man and he just wants to get away, that leads him to other facets of the world. And because of their adventures with Emotep, Evie has now gotten really into just myths and legends, like you said, because like there's nothing in the first two movies
Sure.
that indicates that she would know anything else about other cultures. She's really into Egyptian culture. That's fine. But because Emotep was not a legend, but truth, she's really into now Mayan legends, Aztec legends, Chinese legends, indigenous people legends, Aborigine legends, all that. That's just her thing now. That's part of her hobby. So instead of the bad guys who are aware of Rick and Evie's track record of taking down bad guys being the ones to bring them into the equation, it'd be more interesting, I think, for Alex to call in the cavalry, and it'd
Mm.
be him having to call home and be like, okay, mom, dad. Oh, you need money? He's like,
Hey, I woke
no.
up a
So, you know
mummy.
how you two have a habit of waking mummies? Well, this time I woke one up, and now I
It's a
need your
genetic
help.
thing.
It's a genetic thing. It runs in the family, and like, that's a joke that Jonathan could make. Like, I just think it's. I've said this before. I'll continue to say it. I'm not a writer. I'm not that smart. There are multiple smarter, more interesting things I could have done so that the characters are here, because like there's just no reason to make Evie and Rick these retired boring weirdos. They, if you wanted to make them retired, write a reason. I love Alex, I want him around, but having watched our Indiana Jones, it would have been interesting if they both quit because Alex died, either in the war or because of one of their adventures. I'm not saying they should have done that. I'm saying that would have been a
No, I think it's a bad
reason.
idea.
Well, yes, that would have been a bad idea, but that would have been a reason to retire from the thing they both clearly enjoy. There's no other reason to have them do that. Like, if you're going to retire, why isn't Evie the curator of the British Museum?
Yeah.
Like, why the hell is she not there?
I did not like the idea of her being a romance novelist.
No.
Like the the chemistry between the two characters has always very much been there, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
to have it become suddenly
Uh huh.
like an explicit part of their dynamic was
Uh
kind
huh.
of odd because it's always been kind of an implied part of their dynamic where
Yeah.
the chemistry is there, but it's behind every action they do. And then
Yes.
in this film, it's like at the forefront of their
Yes.
interactions
Right.
instead. It was kind of odd.
It should have been Jonathan. If you wanted to have somebody writing weird stories about their lives, it should have been Jonathan. Because it would have
That's
been
a good
annoying,
point.
and it would have been silly, and it would have been kind of intrusive, which is Jonathan. They should have done that. Because for him to be not only a business owner, but a borderline successful business owner after everything they've set up, what are you doing? That came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, good for him, but that
Yeah.
came out of nowhere. Like, and I know I'm shitting on it, and you said you like it. It's just there's a list, a long list of things that just aren't working for me, and the list of things that do is minuscule. Because like Terracotta soldier guy looks cool. The Yetis are fun. Rick and Alex, fine. But like, why do they have a dick measuring contest? Father and son. Stop it. Just stop it. And then you want to talk about things that don't make sense? Alex is like, "Hey, Dad, don't blow up this thing cuz it'll cause an avalanche. But we can blow up the bazookas and we can shoot machine guns and we can continue to scream and we can throw grenades. Like, those won't cause avalanches." And also, like, that whole scene in general, the fact that Rick is like, "Well, we'll do plan B," which is blow it up. And Alex is like, "Hey, that's really stupid for a reason that makes sense." And the next scene is Evie setting up dynamite on this temple of sorts that they quite literally just discovered. Evie? Bullshit. Just climb up there and cut off the top part. You don't have to blow up the damn thing.
I don't know how you would cut off the top part.
I don't know, with a saw, something. Like, why do they have to blow it up the whole God. I'm sorry. Like, there's a lot of this movie that I think is just categorically dumb.
Well, and it occurred to me as you were speaking, I wonder if maybe I'm not bothered by the differences in the characters as much as I should be, simply because it's not Evie. Like, I noticed it was like they kind of set it up so you're prepared to know that it's not going to be her.
Right.
And
honestly, I could say we're totally different people.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And it was almost like I took it at face value. I was like, okay, this is not Evie.
Yeah, they got divorced and this is the stepmom.
Almost like an alternate reality version of the character. And and I don't know if that it definitely wasn't a conscious decision, but I can see how that might have influenced my like analysis of the film rather than thinking of it as, does this line up as well as the other films? Does it have as like the same kind of rhythm and vibe? I just kind of went, okay, we're in a new genre now. We're in a new thing now. And I had fun with it because I accepted it as it was rather than comparing it to what it could have been or should have been.
I mean, good for you. I can't do that. It's just in general, and I don't think this movie deserves that because it is clearly the third in a trilogy.
Yeah, no, it's not something they intended, but it's something that my brain did, I think.
Is this the first time you saw this one?
Yes.
Fair. I'd be interested to hear in like a couple of years if you ever watched it again, if it hits different, because I totally get and understand watching this and not thinking of it as Evie, because yeah, it's not, but it is. So when you do watch it and you are expecting her to be that character, because I don't think it's out of the realm of expectations for her, because like, yeah, you can act a little different, you can make the character your own, but there's also a certain amount of loose continuity of the character they've set up over the course of 2 movies, and it's notably different. She doesn't do anything academic. She doesn't do anything scholarly. Nothing.
No.
And like, it's yeah.
It was the first time it felt like a pure action adventure film, which is weird because the others felt like they're primarily action adventure films. Like there's nothing overly unique or creative about them and from a genre perspective. But the other 2 felt like they were not accurately, but steeped in history. Like it was very much about the richness of the world. And I felt like this one had that too, but rather than being all about this like ancientness, it was just Asian mythology kind of plugged into the modern day. And like, I mean, in the others, the climactic fights all had very like our modern day characters started fighting with implements from history, and there was always an old artifact that was involved in the climax of the others, right? And in this one, it's very much just, here's your gun, and you're dynamite and you're gonna go blow something up and you're gonna go shoot
Yeah.
something, and
Yeah.
like there wasn't a lot of involving the characters in the ancientness of the world.
Yes, that, and I think it affects the end fight quite a bit because I
Mhm.
could not remember how they beat him going into this movie, and it's because the way they beat him I think is dumb. You said before the divide written in the sand by Alex Stone. That is kind of fun. That's a nice little moment.
Mhm.
But everything around that I think is kind of lame because like the way they beat Emotep the first time is really clever. The way they beat
Mhm.
him the second time is kind of dumb, but like there's a weapon
That
they spend
was
a movie kind of building up. There's foreshadowing
Mhm.
and Chekhov's gun, and in the end
Mhm.
they don't beat him technically. Um, he's beaten
Mhm.
by the situation he created in a way, which is kind of fun.
Mhm.
This time around, they just stab him with the knife, and it's not even like it's not what's her name? I'm sorry, Michelle Yeoh's cool witch lady.
Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna say it right. It's like
Let me
Z
let me look it up.
Z1
Let me look it up real quick because
Z1.
I wanna get it right. Yeah. It's the knife that he had, that she cursed. Z Yuan, Z. I'm just gonna say Z, she. I'm sorry.
I don't even know that it's Z.
I took Chinese.
Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, Michelle Yeoh. I think it would have been more impactful if she was the one to do it, and
Mhm.
I think it would have been more interesting. I don't know. All my brain power went to how they would have brought the O'Connells in. I don't know how you'd end this one necessarily. Um, but I don't like the way they do. It just seems
I
too weird. And also, I can't help again with the first two movies. The books are very important, and it kind of comes and goes as to who has access to those books. And she's had
Mhm.
these ancient magic super scrolls the whole time. Again, 2,000 years, and there wasn't anything in there that you could have done to prevent this from happening. Also, side note, minimal side note, real quick. The apparent ease in this world to raise the dead is remarkably
Yeah.
uncomfortable. There's
Yeah.
two different cultures that have ancient magic where all you
Mhm.
gotta do is talk a little bit and you can raise an army of the dead. That's way too easy. The
Let's get
elder
to those
gods.
social political impacts of things.
Yeah, they spend more time illustrating how hard it is to levitate a feather in Harry Potter 1. Like, damn. Evie raises the dead by accident in the first movie. This world's magic is too
You get the
loosey
right
goosey.
book
All
and
you
you just
yeah.
read it.
Yeah. It's
Boom. Doesn't
too
even have
yeah.
to be in the original language anymore. I don't
Apparently,
know
yeah,
what.
actually no. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a side note of the side note. I didn't like that she did that in English. That would have been
Yeah, I didn't like it
cooler.
either.
Yeah, that would have been cooler if it was in Mandarin. That would have been nice. Because, like, most of
Mhm.
the characters who are Chinese speak Chinese throughout the movie. They did that
Mhm.
consistently with the Egyptian one. I like that moment with Imhotep in the second one where he's like, I know you can understand me, so listen well, and then start speaking English because it's a transition. Like, there was
Mhm.
detail, and then all of a sudden, English.
I I think the reason they did it, because I was paying attention to that and I was kind of thinking, like, why would they choose to have her speak English right now, right? And I think it's because they were afraid that two Mandarin monologues overlapped on top of each other wouldn't have made as much sense to the viewer. I think they were afraid it would confuse people because the only way that
Mm,
you understand things is the subtitles. And even though you would be in clearly different scenes at the time, sometimes monologues overlap on top
mm.
of other scenes. um, I think they could have done it,
Yeah,
but there is an area of potential confusion there.
that's an editing problem. And if
Mhm.
anyone in the writers' room was like, boss, Chinese, they're not gonna get it. It's like, oh, but ancient Egyptian? Yeah, everyone knows how to speak that just fine. Please.
No, again, it's the overlapping monologues part that's the issue, not the language inherently.
Fine. Fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
But no, I that one bothered me a little bit because I felt like out of the 2, well, I don't know which one out of the 2 you would give, but she specifically mentions, like, calling the people awake at one point, and I was
Uh
like,
huh.
"They don't understand you." Um,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's not gonna
Uh,
work.
I also I did have a little bit of I felt a little CinemaSins-ish during the fight with like, what are the stakes here? Because you've got an undead army versus an undead army. Neither one can really kill the other. So like, what's happening here?
They just had to stop the terracotta soldiers from getting across the wall.
Yeah, didn't like that. That didn't make any sense. Why is that a caveat?
Because it's the Great Wall of China.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, sure, fine. Yeah, that sure, okay. I
Yeah.
also I couldn't help but just wonder if I ignore all the other negatives, wouldn't you want to go into this battle with everyone immortal since you can? And then if you're gonna do a spell where you have to sacrifice immortality and you kind of need everyone to play a part, why don't you have everyone be immortal and then sacrifice it later?
How does one get immortality
You just go
in the
dip in
world?
the pool, don't you? You just gotta hop in the pool. Is that not
I
it?
thought it was about prolonged exposure, and the pool's power would unlock the general's like already kind of partially immortality. Like
Well, I
as he would just
thought
be having
I
coming back
thought
from
they
the death.
just had to take a dip in the pool because they specifically Michelle Yeoh specifically has to sacrifice her and her daughter's immortality in order for that spell to work. So that tells me it's not just prolonged exposure, and it's not just having it poured on you because that heals Rick, but he's not immortal. I feel like you have to. I thought you just had to bathe in it because I'm not. I know they don't go in and come out with shapeshifting abilities, but they'd all be
Right.
bulletproof at the very least. Like that could be important or something. Like I don't know. There's
Yeah, I
just
don't know.
it just seemed kind
I
of
don't know if
weird.
they explained that well enough for that to be the case, but they've never really explained anything. Like
Nah,
we don't
well,
really know why Imhotep is immortal.
yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Another bit of convenience. The Shangri-La Crystal Eye water thing got kicked onto the right body when they were trying to pour it on the wrong one.
Mhm.
That's kind of annoying.
Sometimes you roll really poorly in D&D.
Stop it. Stop it. You are better than this. You were giving this movie so much slack. It's ridiculous.
No, you're right. And I think it is the expectations thing. I went in with low expectations because I'd heard bad things. And this is like a C movie, but to me, it is not a total fail. Like, I still enjoyed it. I felt like the characters were interesting and engaging.
Mhm.
There was enough fun to it that I didn't
Yes.
need an explanation for everything.
Yes. I walked away from this viewing thinking, you know what? Yeah, not that bad. I was kind of surprised though on how badly it's rated on Rotten Tomatoes. Like even I wouldn't have gone necessarily that far. Just take a guess. Critic score, Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, now that you've said that, I want to say something in the 30s.
13. It
13!
has a
Holy
critical
cow, what
score
do they have
of
to say?
13 and I was like, "Jesus, that's not that bad. It's not good, but lord, okay."
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
No, just we're almost there. We're about at that time. Tis not a whale. Tis not a whale
No,
at
no,
all.
it's not a whale.
But tis not 13.
No, not by any
Oof.
means. I'm trying to figure out what they had to say about it that was so
I think more people missed
bad.
Rachel Weisz more than we did. Probably. I honestly think that's a significant chunk of this. It
Okay,
also
well, one of them is like the whole thing, despite its decent start, because I did actually notice the start was really good. Like the whole bit with the
the
general
opening.
and
Yeah. Oh no, I dig all that. But that's also like you
um
could do that and it not be connected to the other two Mummy movies, and it's fine. You can watch that on
yeah.
its own, which is that's kind of cool.
Honestly, I would watch a whole movie that was just that story.
Oh
But anyway,
yeah.
it says this one feedback says the whole thing, despite its decent start and large budget, looks a bit of a mess to me. An entertaining one, no doubt, for those who love the franchise, but those who don't would be bored. Um, And that,
I think that's
well,
fair.
another, yeah, and that feels like a pretty solid review, actually.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I
And so another one says the Mummy franchise is now really is dead, dead, dead. It is so dead it could win gold at the Dead Olympics.
damn.
It's
Yeah.
like, what? I don't know.
I
It's
think
not
that's
terrible, but I would not put it at the top.
I think it is
I don't
terrible, but
know.
it's fun. I think you could do both. Cuz next week it's going to be terrible and not fun. This one is terrible and fun. And I think it'll be fun to compare these notes because that's
Mhm.
going to be a really good example of like this is terrible and it's not even fun.
Yeah, yeah. I can't believe we're subjecting ourselves to the Tom Cruise version of
We
this.
have to. It's yeah. All this is something I found surprising though.
We would have set ourselves up for like a cyclical failure here, where like we start a franchise and
Uh-huh.
it's great, but as the franchise continues, it deteriorates,
It
which is like
does.
a natural state of things.
Yeah, we'll get to one where it's the opposite. I don't know which one yet, but we'll do it one day. What I did find shocking, though, and I refuse to believe it, this movie has a 13 on Rotten Tomatoes, but the Dwayne Johnson Scorpion King spin-off movie has a 40. Bullshit.
40?
Bullshit.
40.
40%
There's
critical
no way.
review. Bullshit. And I will never, well, not for this project at the very least. I have no intention of watching that one. But there's multiple Scorpion King movies. I refuse to believe that that movie is better than this one. I refuse to believe that.
We gotta like this is slowly turning into like a, a podcast that just combats Rotten Tomatoes. We're sitting
Yeah.
here like, we watched this movie, and apparently Rotten Tomatoes people have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say for the viewer that's still here now again, they're not here. I know how Rotten Tomatoes works. It's the averages, just more people think it's negative than they do. But even so, that's surprising. That's a lot of people. One thing I
Like
did
IMDb gives it 5.2 out of 10. Like that's
the
50%
the Emperor or
for Dragon. Yeah.
okay, that's about what I would say though. So like if this was a paper or a movie I was grading, I
Mhm.
would not give it a passing grade. And if I did, it was a D minus. Like, I don't think it's
I
a
would give it a
C.
passing grade, but I would say that it needs to be worked on
Yeah.
before you
Well, see,
submit it.
for me, a C is one where there's equal amounts good and bad. My go-to is Independence Day 2. The cool stuff is awesome. The bad stuff is awful. This one, there's not enough good for it to be more than a D for me, at the very least. It's just the
I
bad
think
stuff
it serves
is
its
a lot.
purpose as a movie. I think a movie that fails is a movie that I can't get interested in and involved in or entertained by.
Mm.
And I was entertained by this film. I thought it was fun. I thought there was a bit of escapism there. I thought there was enough like architectural story and like cultural design and stuff involved. The artistry of the fight choreography was there. There was enough in this film for me to be entertained and like if I'm not thinking too hard, like I am having a really good time with the film. And like I know that you and we like to analyze things,
I don't
but
think
you
that's
also
a
have to think
positive.
about it.
If you
Like you
have
have
to,
to think about the fact that a lot of people watch films to turn their brains off. Like
if you have to turn your brain off to enjoy it, it's not a good movie.
that's so funny that you think that. It's
Wait,
really
what? I would argue that's objectively true.
no, I think if you want a film to be a classic, if you want it to have something to say, then yeah, it needs to have a solid plot structure and film.
Uh
Like it
huh.
needs to like have a thesis essentially.
Uh
But
huh.
if you like film is primarily entertainment. There's a lot of things in
Sure.
entertainment that don't make sense, that aren't logically there, but they still entertain.
Yeah.
I think this falls under that category, and
I.
I think there's enough sense to it that it doesn't I don't know, it doesn't drag me out of suspension of
Hmm.
disbelief.
I guess that's technically true. I feel like there are enough movies these days that have found a middle ground of like, yeah, you could turn your brain off and enjoy it, but if you wanted to analyze it, the good shit is there. It's there. Like, there's like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of monster movies or maybe slasher flicks where it's like, oh wow, like the cinematography in this is actually really good and no one really pays attention because it's just so gory. Like, there's nothing to that here. Like, this is like Star Wars 2. You could try to look for the good stuff, but like of the good things, there's not, no, not in Star Wars 2. That's an episode for another time. Like you could do
Yeah,
that for
I don't know.
3, not for 2.
I think there's, I don't want to say redeemable qualities in Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor because I don't think that it saves the film, but I think there are enough good things to make me want to watch it again.
Well, okay, I see that I would agree with. I had enough fun that I would absolutely watch it again, and there are some movies I wouldn't. But I
Well, in
don't.
that case, to me, it passes as a movie because I was entertained and I had fun.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, if a movie makes me mad or upset, or if I get confused,
Yeah.
or if, like, that's a failed movie.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I guess we'll have to do sometime. We'll have to make like our scales because I
Mhm,
think it can be a bad movie and still be enjoyable and still be fun and still be one that I would watch again. Like, it doesn't make me mad. I mean, I'm annoyed because I think they had dropped the ball in many places, and I feel
mhm.
disappointed because you set a standard that was not very high, but higher than this. But I wouldn't say this is one of the worst movies ever. This didn't piss me
No.
off. This isn't awful. It shouldn't exist. Like, that's next week. That's
Well,
yeah.
and
That's I'm gonna come
I
back
think
to
you could
all
list a
that.
couple of the Terminator films under this one. Like,
Oh,
I'm
I would.
thinking, yeah, and just in the sense of like, what do they do their job as a sequel? Are they entertaining? Do they make sense? Like all of these sort of qualifications. And I feel like this one kind of does its job as a sequel, is entertaining, doesn't make sense. Right. So like there's enough in the it did kind of its job category where
Mhm.
I don't know. I can see why it ended the franchise, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like I've also seen franchises continue past movies that were way worse than this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I definitely think it's you either in a kind way don't care that it's as bad as it is, or I just feel like it's worse than you do. I'm not entirely sure.
I think you're
Um
holding it to a pretty high standard where I was holding it to a lower standard, and I would need to rewatch it a couple of times before I had a really genuinely critical take on it. Like
that's fair. I say that all the time
and my
too.
first watch at least, I
Yeah.
thought it was kind of
You
fun.
got you got to
Like
you got to give it more than one watch, which is totally. Did you watch it today?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so see, sometimes with me watching it one day, you may hate it next week because you'll digest it a little bit. But I mean, we've been going back and go
Yeah,
ahead.
no.
You don't think
I
so?
My active memory is way more when I'm watching the film.
Oh, fair
Like,
enough.
I will and I think that has something to do with the way that I process Beetlejuice too, but, like, even now, having finished the film around 6, I or a little bit earlier than that actually, I'm having a hard time recalling how I felt at all the different points of it.
Hmm.
That's why I usually take notes.
Mm.
Um, and I'm best able to tell you how I feel about things when I'm sitting with it in front of me and I have the medium to interact with.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But
Yeah.
tis not a whale, though. We all in agreement with
No,
that. Okay.
no, no.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways there's plenty more to say, both good and bad, that we didn't get to. I just want to say
Mhm.
that for the record. Um, I
The
do
record
wish we
that
would have
no one will
got.
ever listen
Yeah, this is for us. I do
to.
wish that we would have gotten the fourth one. It would have taken place in
Yeah.
South America. It would have been like Aztec or Mayan stuff, and that would have been awesome. I really would have loved to continue
The
this.
the the line was like, "I'm going someplace where there are no
Uh
mummies."
huh.
Peru.
Yeah.
Soon after,
Yeah.
mummies are found in Peru.
That was fun. That was fun. I guess last little note, because we're at an hour. It was kind of weird to spend the last movie setting them up as a reincarnated princess and a warrior for God, and then do nothing with that.
It's nothing with that,
That's
yeah.
like, you don't have to do something with that, but I think again that would have encouraged the whole like, no, of course these fuckers aren't gonna retire. They're gonna be doing stuff until they die because they're a reincarnated princess and a warrior for God. Like,
Well, and then the whole like romp around the world thing is ultimately their stories were so entangled with the mythologies that they had created and used in Egypt. They really should have just gone fully for that. Like
yeah,
it should have just been like let's find more weird ancient mythological stuff from Egypt
yeah,
and use that
yeah,
in finding new stories.
yeah, yeah. That's us though. Next week's gonna suck, man.
Well, it'll be fun in the sense that we get to yell about stuff.
Yeah, I'm scared though because you, I feel like you're gonna come into this and be like, I actually didn't hate it. I'm gonna be like, I'm not, I don't know, I'm not, I'm gonna struggle with that strongly because it's terrible.
Yeah. We'll see. See.
But see, like I've spent the last 2 weeks building it up as something terrible, and you're gonna say, well, you see, I went into it with low expectations, and I walked away entertained, and it was a fun action movie because Tom Cruise he was running, so like I didn't hate it. And I'm gonna be like, no, no. Anyway, we're done. Bye. See you next week.